Realism is the reality and conflicts are inevitable. It is pertinent to study how India intends to navigate this complex landscape. It is obvious that this growing entropy in the world poses significant challenges in multiple domains such as military, diplomacy, economy, and soft power, etc. However, in this talk, we shall restrict ourselves to analyzing the challenges to the military security domain. So let me start by bringing out the security challenges that India faces today. The India-China rivalry, seen through the lens of offensive realism, reflects China's push for dominance, evidenced through military infrastructure build-up along the LAC, salami slicing tactics, and strategic encirclement via initiatives like the BRI. These moves classically align with John Mearsheimer's idea of power maximization. These moves, despite strong bilateral trade and shared platforms like the BRICS and SCO, core issues like the border dispute and India's presence of Dalai Lama in India continue to fuel mistrust. There is a persistent security dilemma which keeps both sides on the edge and limits genuine cooperation. Pakistan, meanwhile, has used its strategic location to its advantage, securing military and economic support from both China and the United States. According to latest research by SIPRI, from 2020 to 24, China accounted for nearly 81% of Pakistan's arms imports. It includes cutting-edge jets, advanced air defense systems, and even a promise of fifth-generation fighter. Add to that the $60 billion investment in CPEC, it's clear that this all-weather friendship between the two is more than just talk. So what does it mean for us? It means that we can no longer look at the Western Front at the Pakistan challenge as only through a traditional Western Front. It has transformed more into an augmented Western Front. At the same time, Pakistan's relationship with the US has been turbulent yet steady. On a lighter note, it seems for the US, Pakistan is like that X. No matter how hard it tries, it's just not able to move on. The messy entanglements and the shared history keeps pulling it back in. Just in February 25, Washington signed off on a $397 million package to sustain PAF's F-16 fleet. The recent IMF's grant of $1.4 billion to Pakistan could not have manifested without American backing. Playing these power dynamics, Pakistan has managed to modernize its military and gain diplomatic leverage. Yet, it continues to rely on terrorism as a tool for asymmetric warfare against India, backing groups like Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, Hizbul Mujahideen, and the TRF, which have been behind the attacks ranging from 2001 Parliament assault and 26/11 to the recent Pahalgam massacre. India's regional security is under significant stress as its neighborhood-first policy faces challenges from shifting alliances, political instabilities, and intensifying great power rivalry. China's deepening regional footprint through investments and political meddling in Nepal, Maldives, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh complicates bilateral ties. The emergence of Taliban 2.0 in Afghanistan landed India in a precarious spot, but we have since adopted a pragmatic approach considering the security implications. Instability in Bangladesh and Myanmar led to refugee influx, arms and drug trafficking, and extremist threats destabilizing India's eastern borders. India's strategic interest in the Indian Ocean region revolve around securing vital sea lanes for trade and asserting its role as a regional leader. The sea lanes of communications in the IOR are India's primary trade artery, accounting for nearly 80% of its external trade by value and 90% of energy imports. Through initiatives like Mahasagar and multilateral partnerships like Quad, India aims to ensure a stable rule-based order. However, these interests face growing challenges from China's expanding presence through port infrastructure and military deployments. The increasing presence of extra-regional powers and vulnerability of key choke points remain a critical test for India's strategic foresight and security calculus. Apart from these, India faces other evolving security concerns as well. The China-Pakistan nexus often emerges as a hybrid threat. This grey zone conflict encompasses cyber attacks, disinformation, and economic coercion, transcending traditional warfare and posing a significant challenge to India's internal security. The nuclear triangle of India, China, and Pakistan classically highlights Glenn Snyder's stability-instability paradox, where nuclear weapons reduce the risk of large-scale wars but encourage lower-level conflicts. In the light of these challenges, defining India's grand strategy becomes imperative. Referring to the definition of grand strategy by Kanti Bajpai, it is the combination of national resources and capabilities, including military, diplomatic, political, economic, cultural, and moral, that are deployed in the service of national security. Since India doesn't yet have a clearly defined national security strategy, the syndicate looked up two important sources to shape the outline of India's grand strategy. First, the vision document Viksit Bharat 2047, and second, a statement made by former Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao in the Parliament back in May 1995, which I shall elaborate on subsequently. The Viksit Bharat vision aims to transform India into a developed nation by 2047, focusing on key areas like economic growth, social progress, environmental sustainability, and good governance. While this vision does not explicitly mention military strategic goals, we can read between the lines to identify some important themes. First is the pursuit of strategic autonomy, rooted in India's tradition of an independent foreign policy. Second is the strong emphasis on territorial integrity, keeping India's border secure and intact. Third is grounded in economic prosperity, being one of the fastest growing economies in the world, touted to be the third largest economy by 2028. And finally, with the steady economic growth and democratic stability, India aspires to earn its well-deserved seat in the UN Security Council. Back in 1995, Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao also outlined India's grand strategic goals in the Parliament, emphasizing the defense of India's national territory across land, sea, and air, capacity to ensure internal coherence, and the ability to influence neighboring countries and develop an out-of-area contingency handling capability. The commonalities of these two grand strategic thoughts are hard to miss and also bring out a continuity in our strategic outlook. India's big picture strategy can be broadly classified into three major goals: territorial integrity, regional and global influence, and security capability to ensure economic prosperity. So, having derived the fundamentals of India's grand strategic vision, we see that it is essentially dependent on a formidable hard power at its core. But achieving this isn't easy in a tough and competitive global security environment. As the renowned scholar Hans Morgenthau has said, military strength is a key part of national power, and using it wisely is crucial to protect countries' interest. In today's world, soft power and economic influence can only take you so far. They have a real impact only when backed by strength. That's why a strong and modern military isn't just one part of India's rise, it's the very foundation. There's a clear and urgent message: India must make steady, long-term investments in military readiness. Now that we've established why India needs a credible hard power, it's just as important to understand when and how to use it. And that understanding needs to be backed by evidence. As India continues to strengthen its military, decision makers must carefully evaluate the nature, urgency, and intensity of each potential threat. This ensures that any response is not only proportionate, but also aligned with India's long-term strategic goals. To make that possible, we need a proactive approach to threat assessment. With that in mind, the syndicate has identified 13 key risk assessment factors that should shape how we decide to apply hard power. These factors will also serve as the basis for our research, which we will be outlining in the next part of this talk. Firstly, miscalculated military action, especially near nuclear thresholds, risk uncontrolled escalation. Decision to apply military force should be strictly controlled by the intended escalation matrix. Building on this, loss of initiative due to sluggish decision-making or delayed execution enables the adversary to regroup or garner external support. Even with swift action, ambiguous or inconclusive military operations prolong conflict. Indecisiveness dilutes deterrence, fuels insurgency, and creates a vacuum for exploitation by hostile actors. Compounding the risk further, collateral damage from imprecise strikes can defeat the strategic communication and invite backlash. Every military action should aim to have a strategic effect. Operations that fail to degrade combat power, disrupt command and control structures, or break the enemy's morale preclude off-ramping in a conflict. Additionally, perceived illegitimacy of military operations invite diplomatic isolation, sanctions, and moral censure. An adversary may leverage global opinion to constrain future action. Poorly evaluated cost-benefit analysis leads to quagmires where military gains are eclipsed by human, financial, or political costs. The supremacy of the critical factor of surprise cannot be overstated in any military action. Lack of surprise can lead to strategic blunders. Operational risks also intensify due to terrain constraints or logistical unfeasibility. Military action would always be dictated by the ease of conducting the operation. Closely related to this is the target selection and feasibility of engaging targets at depth without making our own forces vulnerable. With the growing capability of targeting at depth, the reciprocal threat also increases multifold. If the ultimate aim of war is to restore peace, along with escalation control, an essential factor is the viability and the ease of conflict termination. Next, inaccurate, delayed, or manipulated intelligence can lead to disastrous outcomes. History is replete with examples of operational disasters due to intelligence failures. Ultimately, if the purpose of the war is to communicate and impose political will, every military action must have a deterrence value. Capability, credibility, and communication play a vital role. So, having identified the key risk assessment factors, it is evident that the decision to employ military force is never straightforward. It involves difficult choices. As Harvard scholar Graham Allison explains, this decision-making happens on three distinct levels: the rational actor model, which focuses on national goals; organizational process model, shaped by how institutions work; and the bureaucratic politics model, which looks at internal debates and negotiations. Each perspective will shed light on how threats are viewed and why certain military actions are chosen. With the security environment changing and India's strategic goals becoming clearer, the time is ripe now for a well-rounded subjective and objective assessment of our military threats based on the factors discussed till now.